Hello, grade 8s. This is math, and we are in Unit 2, integers. Starting off, we are going to learn how to multiply integers today. We're going to work on that a little bit more in future lessons. We're also going to learn to divide integers. And if you remember what integers are, it's just those positive and negative numbers, whole numbers. So in the past, you've probably learned something that multiplication is simply repeated addition. So 5 times 3, or we could have written this as 3 times 5, right? They're still equal. Sorry, 3 times 5. We could do 3 how many times? 5 times, and add them up. 3, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. It would be 15. So 5 times 3 is 15. Now, later on in math, we also learned about positive and negative numbers. So we could also represent this 5 times 3 as 5 times positive 3. Both are positive. Before, we just assumed that they're positive. And so we can take those 3 and we can go positive 3, positive 3, positive 3, positive 3, positive 3. 5 times there, right? And it's 15. Or we could have done it the opposite way. We could have kind of like flipped these and think, you know what, I'm going to write positive 5 how many times? Positive 3 times. Positive 5, positive 5, positive 5 is 15. We could use a number line to represent it and, jump up by 3s 5 times. 5 times and get to positive 15. So the number line. Here, this shows that a positive number times a positive number will always equal a positive number. Makes sense. What about if we're using some negative numbers? I didn't mean to go that far. I want to still be able to see some of this up here. What if we instead change one of those numbers to a negative number? So here, instead of 2 positive numbers, now we have a negative times a positive. Well, we could do that negative 5 how many times? 3 times, right? We could add it up. Negative 5 added up 3 times. Notice the only thing that changed here in the first thing was positive turned into negative, and where we wrote that positive 5 3 times, we're now writing our negative 3 5 times. You probably remember we learned this where negative 5 bad things happen, and then we're going to add 5 more bad things. Oh, things got worse. So now we have negative 5, another negative 5, that's negative 10. And then we're going to add 5 more negative things to our life, negative 15, and we end up at negative 15. Notice that when we have a negative number and a positive number being multiplied, it gave us a negative number. Okay, negative, positive. These are opposite signs. It gave us a negative number. One way we could show this with the number line is jump down 5. Remember, right is positive, left is negative. 5, 10, 15, and we end up at negative 15. What about we switch the order? Instead, we have our positive number first. Keep that positive, and instead we're going to have negative 3. Well, remember, you can choose whichever one you're going to use. You're going to either add up the second number or the first number. It doesn't matter. Just make sure it's the number of times as the other one, right? So here, I'm going to take those negative numbers. I'm going to take negative 3, and I'm going to add it up 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now it's negative 3. 3 bad things happen. And then we add 3 more bad things. Negative 6, negative 9, negative 12, negative 15. And we end up at negative 15. Notice something. Negative 5 times positive 3 and positive 5 times negative 3. We actually got to the same number. Opposite signs here. Opposite signs here. We ended up with negative numbers as our answers. Using this, we can go down negative 3 5 times, and we end up at negative 15. Now, things get a little trickier when we then decide we're going to have negative and a negative number. We're going to multiply negative numbers. I have one way shown here that's complex. It's not exactly super easy to follow, so there is another model that could work, but try your best. Notice here that we added our negative 3. We added our negative 3's 5 times, positive 5 times. So it happened positive 5 times. But what if instead we need to do this negative 3 negative 5 times? How about we add negative 3 5 times? Right? Because there's this negative here, we need to do it a negative time. Some of you are already thinking, what? This is a little confusing. Others are maybe understanding. So here I've written in the exact same thing I wrote above, except now I've added in some negative signs right before the -3. And to make it mathematically correct, because you can't have these directly beside each other, I put in extra brackets. So earlier we learned last year in grade 7 that if you subtract a negative number, it's actually the same thing as positive, right? If I take away, remember subtract, it means take away 3 negative things from your life. If I get rid of 3 negative things, that would actually be a positive thing, right? It would better your life. So we have +3 plus +3 plus +3 plus +3 plus +3, because every time we have this negative, 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 it's actually the same thing as a positive. And there we end up with just adding up a bunch of +3's. 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, which is +15. Hold up. 2 negative numbers make a positive number when multiplied? It's true. It does happen. And we'll show a little example using a different method right away. I find it hard to show it on the number line, so I'm going to show it using this thing, tile model. If you remember, last year we had tiles and the yellow ones were positive and the red ones were negative. I use pink because I have pink highlighter. And we learned that if you have a positive thing and you add a negative thing, the same value, so 1 and 1, it's actually equal to 0, right? So you take +1 plus -1, one good thing happens and then a bad thing of the same value happens. It's the same as 0. Example, I give you a candy, and then I take that candy away, you'd have 0 candies, right? It didn't change, didn't cause the amount of candies you have to go up or down in the long run. In the end, it still was just what you had before we did these things, right? So we're going to use this principle a little bit for this here. You can do this, use these 3 rules for tile model. You can use them. It doesn't matter if it's this negative times a negative, but I'm going to do it to show this because I think this model shows it a little better than the other ways. So the first rule is if your first number, so this -2 in this example down here, if your first number is positive, we're going to put tiles in. And how many times? It also tells us how many times. So this isn't positive though. So this first rule we're not going to use. We're not going to put tiles in. Whereas the second rule, if the first number is negative, which it is, there we go, we're going to take tiles out, okay? So since this is negative, we're going to take tiles out, and we're going to take it out how many times. This tells us how many times. We're going to take tiles out 2 times, because this is 2, okay? Got that so far? Because this was negative, we're going to take tiles out. We're not putting them in, we're taking them out, and it's going to take out 2 times. The second number, so this -3, tells us how many of which, either positive or negative tiles, we are going to take out. So this is how many we're going to take out, and it's going to be negative tiles. So it's going to be red tiles, or pink tiles in this case. Now, how we normally start is we start with nothing in the circle. And sometimes, you know, it's pretty easy. We're going to take tiles out. We're going to take -3 tiles out. But if you look at it, there's no tiles in there to start with, right? There's a little bit of yellow bleeding through my page. Ignore that for now. There's no tiles in there, so how are you supposed to take groups of -3 out? Well, we're going to use this principle up here where a positive plus a negative is 0. We're going to put pairs inside. See how I put pairs? I put pairs of them inside. How many did I put inside? Well, I knew that I was going to be taking out groups of 3, right? And I was going to have to do it 2 times. What's 2 times 3? 6. So I put 6 of each in here. So I put 6 positives and 6 negatives. So then it said, take tiles out. How many of which do we take out? We're going to take tiles out of this circle. We're going to take out -3. How many times? 2 times. We're going to take out -3 2 times. So I took -3, took it out, took -3, took it out. And what did it turn into? All we were left with were these positives. How many were we left with? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's +6. And that's our answer. So it's negative number times a negative number is +6. So we've developed some rules here that maybe enable us to not have to use the model, even though it's pretty good to try it so that it kind of reinforces what we do here. But we notice that same numbers made a positive number. Same signs made a positive number. When they were both negative, it made a positive number. When they were both positive, it made a positive number. We also learned that opposite signs, so negative and a positive made a negative number, and positive and a negative made a negative number. So our rules here are that same sign gives a positive number when multiplying, and opposite sign gives a negative number. This right here is the meat of this lesson. If you remember this, you will always know how to multiply integers. If they have the same sign, so either both positive or both negative, our answer is going to be positive. If they have opposite signs, so one negative, one positive, or one positive, one negative, it's going to be a negative answer. And then all you have to do is use the multiplication we've been doing since we were in grade probably 3. So let's put that into practice with some examples. We've got positive 2 times negative 3. Well, first, positive sign, negative sign, they're opposites, so this has to be negative. And 2 times 3 is 6. Cool. What about negative 21 times negative 3? Negative sign, these are the same sign, so it has to be positive. That's our rule. Same sign is positive. 21 times 3, well, we can go 3 times 1 is, our 1's digit is 3. 3 times 2 is 6, so it's positive 63. Doesn't matter how big or small numbers are, these rules still apply. In another example, we have positive 6 times negative 2. Negative, positive, those are both opposite signs. So it's got to be negative, and 6 times 2 is 12.